Commander Jake Morrison sat in his chair on Luna Station, drinking his third cup of coffee that morning. The view through the massive windows showed Earth hanging in space like a blue marble. He had been stationed here for 2 years now, watching over humanity's first major space station. Most days were quiet, filled with routine reports and supply shipments. The alarm broke the peaceful silence. Red lights flashed across the command center as his communications officer, Lieutenant Amy Parker, turned to him with wide eyes. "Sir, we're getting an emergency transmission. It's coming from deep space, but the signal is incredibly strong. And sir, it's not human." Jake set down his coffee and walked over to her station. In 30 years of space travel, humanity had met dozens of alien species. Most were friendly traders or distant diplomats from the Galactic Council, but emergency transmissions were rare. "Put it through the main screen," Jake ordered. The large display flickered to life, showing a creature that Jake recognized as a Cytherian. The insect-like being had 4 arms and golden eyes that seemed to glow with desperation. Ambassador Veltar, Jake realized. He had met the proud alien diplomat several times during trade negotiations. But this was not the same confident creature he remembered. Veltar's usually perfect appearance was disheveled. Scorch marks covered his formal robes, and his golden eyes held something Jake had never seen from any Cytherian before: fear. "People of Earth," Veltar began, his voice carrying across space, with a tremor that sent chills down Jake's spine. "I speak for the coalition of threatened worlds. Our civilizations face complete destruction. We have no choice but to ask for help from all species, including those we have not called upon before." Jake leaned forward. The Cytherians had technology that made human ships look like toys. Their military was feared across the galaxy. If they were asking for help, something terrible was happening. 3 months ago, an ancient enemy awakened from deep space. They call themselves the Harvesters. They are machines, but not like any we have ever seen. They learn from every battle. They adapt to every weapon we use against them. Nothing stops them. The transmission showed images that made Jake's blood run cold. Massive robotic ships, sleek and deadly, moving through space like predators. Planets burning as strange machines stripped them clean of all life. Cities turning to ash in moments. The Drakmiri Empire fell in 6 days. The Xanthari Republic lasted 2 weeks. The Helion Federation fought for a month before their homeworld was consumed. 12 major civilizations have already been destroyed. Hundreds of smaller worlds are gone. Amy gasped beside him. Jake had visited some of those worlds during diplomatic missions. The Drakmiri alone had a fleet of 10,000 ships. The idea that they could fall so quickly seemed impossible. "We have tried everything," Veltar continued. "Our greatest weapons, our most advanced strategies, our finest military minds. The Harvesters adapt to it all. They turn our own technology against us. They seem to know our every move before we make it." The transmission showed battle footage. Jake watched in horror as alien fleets, some with ships larger than cities, were torn apart by the Harvester machines. The robots moved with perfect coordination, their attacks precisely calculated to cause maximum damage. "We are broadcasting this message to all known species. We ask for any help you can provide. Ships, weapons, soldiers, strategies, anything. We are facing extinction, and we cannot face it alone." The screen flickered as the signal weakened. Veltar's image became grainy, but his words remained clear. "To the humans of Earth, we know your military is small compared to ours. We know your technology is still developing. But we are desperate. If you have anything that might help, any ideas we have not tried, please respond. Time is running short. For all of us." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Jake stared at the blank screen, his mind racing. The most powerful civilizations in the galaxy were being destroyed by these Harvester machines, and they were asking humanity for help. "Sir," Amy said quietly, "what do we do?" Jake was about to answer when another alarm sounded. This time it was the direct line to Earth Command. Captain Lisa Grant's face appeared on a smaller screen, her expression grim. "Jake, tell me you got that transmission," she said without any greeting. Every word of it, Captain. How bad is this? Worse than Veltar let on. We're getting reports from across the galaxy. The Harvesters aren't just winning battles, they're learning from them. Each victory makes them stronger. Intel suggests they've been dormant for thousands of years, waiting. Jake rubbed his forehead. What does Earth Command want us to do? Our entire fleet is maybe 100 ships. These Harvester things just destroyed civilizations with thousands of ships each. President Ryan Hayes is calling an emergency session. He wants all senior officers back on Earth immediately. We're going to discuss this as a species. Lisa, be honest with me. What can we possibly do against something that destroyed the Drakmiri Empire in 6 days? Captain Grant was quiet for a moment. I don't know, Jake, but we can't just sit here and watch the galaxy burn. Get down to Earth. We need to figure this out. The connection ended, leaving Jake alone with his thoughts. He looked out at Earth, so peaceful and blue in the darkness of space. Humanity had only been part of the galactic community for 37 years. They were still considered newcomers, barely advanced enough to have a voice in the Galactic Council. Most alien species saw humans as useful traders and decent diplomats, but nobody took their military seriously. Human ships were smaller, human weapons were less advanced, and human tactics were considered primitive by galactic standards. But something nagged at Jake's mind. In all his years of military service, he had learned that sometimes the best solutions came from unexpected places. The Harvesters were adapting to advanced alien technology and strategies. Maybe what was needed wasn't more advanced thinking, but different thinking entirely. He turned to Amy, who was still staring at the communication station. Lieutenant, prep my shuttle. I need to get to Earth Command as fast as possible. Yes, sir. Should I send a response to Ambassador Veltar? Jake paused. What could he possibly say? That humanity would try to help with their tiny fleet and primitive weapons? That they would succeed where the greatest civilizations in the galaxy had failed? Tell him that Earth has received his message and that we're considering our response. Tell him that humanity does not abandon its allies. As Amy composed the message, Jake took one last look at Earth. Somewhere down there, the leaders of humanity were about to make a decision that could determine the fate of the entire galaxy. He just hoped they were ready for what was coming. The shuttle bay doors opened and Jake headed toward his ship. Behind him, Luna Station continued its watch over Earth, but now that watch had taken on a new meaning. The galaxy was counting on them, even if most of it didn't realize it yet. In the depths of space, the Harvesters continued their advance, consuming world after world. But for the first time since they had awakened, they were about to encounter something they had never faced before. A species that had learned to survive on one of the most dangerous planets in the known galaxy. The Deathworlders were about to wake up. Dr. Alex Turner stared at the twisted metal fragments spread across his laboratory table. The pieces had been recovered from a battlefield where the Zenthari Republic made their last stand against the Harvesters. Even now, 3 days after the samples arrived on Earth, the metal seemed to pulse with an alien energy that made his instruments go crazy. Computer, run analysis sequence 12 again, Alex said, pushing his glasses up his nose. He had been working for 18 straight hours trying to understand how the Harvester technology worked. The lab door opened and Captain Lisa Grant walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She looked as tired as Alex felt. The emergency meetings on Earth had been going on for 2 days straight and nobody had slept much. Any luck figuring out what makes these things tick? Lisa asked, handing him a coffee. Alex took a grateful sip before answering. It's incredible, Lisa. And terrifying. Look at this. He pointed to a piece of metal no bigger than his thumb. This fragment can process information faster than our best computers. But that's not the scary part. He pulled up data on his screen showing wave patterns and energy readings. The scary part is how it learns. Every time I run a test on it, it adapts. The first scan showed one set of results. The second scan showed it had changed to resist that type of scanning. By the 5th scan, it was actively trying to hack into my computer. Lisa set down her coffee and leaned closer to the screen. You're saying this piece of metal is thinking? Not thinking like we do, but it's learning and adapting in real time. Now imagine millions of these fragments working together, In a single harvester ship, they share information instantly, adapt to any attack, and get stronger with every battle. No wonder the alien fleets couldn't stop them, Lisa muttered. Every time they tried something new, the harvesters learned from it and became immune. Alex nodded grimly. I've been studying the battle reports from the fallen civilizations. The pattern is always the same. First contact goes badly but shows promise. The aliens adapt their tactics and weapons. They win a few small victories. Then suddenly, the harvesters counter everything they try. It's like the machines download the entire military doctrine of a species and figure out how to beat it. Lisa walked to the window overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Earth Command was built on a floating platform, and the waves below looked peaceful compared to the chaos in the galaxy. Alex, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Can we beat these things? Can humanity do something that 12 advanced civilizations couldn't? Alex was quiet for a long moment, looking at the alien fragments. Honestly? With conventional thinking, no. If we try to fight them the same way everyone else has, we'll lose just as fast. But I've been thinking about something. All these civilizations that fell, they're what we call Type 2 and Type 3 civilizations. They've had thousands of years to develop perfect military strategies, perfect coordination, perfect technology. Lisa turned back to face him. And that's bad because perfect can be predictable. I've been looking at the tactical reports. The Drakmiri use the same battle formations they've used for 2,000 years. The Zenthari followed military protocols that haven't changed in centuries. Every species fought exactly the way you'd expect them to fight. A new voice spoke from the doorway, which made them easy to figure out. Both Alex and Lisa turned to see Lieutenant Colonel Mike Davis entering the lab. The Special Forces officer looked like he hadn't slept in days, but his eyes were sharp and focused. Mike, Lisa said, how did the strategy meetings go? About as well as you'd expect. Half the generals want to build bigger guns. The other half want to hide until this blows over. Mike walked over to look at the harvester fragments. But I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, Alex, about how these things adapt to logical, systematic approaches. Go on, Alex encouraged. In Special Forces, we have a saying, when the enemy expects you to go left and you go right, you win. When the enemy expects you to go right and you go left, you win. But when the enemy can't figure out what the hell you're going to do next, you really win. Lisa raised an eyebrow. You're talking about unpredictability. I'm talking about chaos, Mike corrected. Controlled chaos. The kind of fighting that looks crazy to an outside observer, but makes perfect sense to the people doing it. Alex's eyes lit up. That's it. That's exactly it. These harvesters were built to fight logical enemies, enemies that follow rules and patterns and strategies that make sense. But humans don't always make sense, Lisa said slowly, understanding where this was going, especially in combat. Mike added. Human military doctrine embraces what other species call primitive tactics. We use psychology, deception, and calculated risks that look like suicide to other species. Alex started pacing around the lab, his excitement growing. The harvester's adaptation process must be based on logical analysis of enemy behavior. They see a pattern, analyze it, and develop a counter. But what if there is no pattern to analyze? The three of them looked at each other as the implications sank in. Lisa was the first to speak. We need to test this theory. But how do we do that without getting everyone killed? Before anyone could answer, an urgent alarm sounded throughout the facility. The intercom crackled to life with Commander Jake Morrison's voice. All senior staff to the command center immediately. We have a situation. They rushed to the command center, where Jake was coordinating with multiple screens showing space around Earth. His face was grim, but determined. What's happening? Lisa asked. We just received a distress call from the Catherian evacuation fleet. They're trying to escape their homeworld with survivors, but 3 harvester ships caught up with them. They're asking for immediate assistance. How far out are they? Mike asked. 6 hours at maximum speed. The problem is they've got civilian Transports that can't fight and can't run fast enough to escape. Alex felt his stomach drop. Jake, we can't fight harvester ships. Our weapons are decades behind Catherian technology and they couldn't stop them. Maybe we can't fight them the way the Catherians did, Jake said. But maybe we can fight them our way. Lisa looked at the tactical display showing the positions of human ships in the area. Jake, what are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to find out if our theory about unpredictability works. We've got 4 escort ships in that sector. Small, fast, and armed with weapons the harvesters have never seen before. Because they're too primitive for any other species to use, Mike said with a grim smile. Exactly. Kinetic projectiles, chemical explosives, and nuclear missiles. Technology so old-fashioned that no advanced civilization bothers with it anymore. Alex looked at the data streaming in from the battle zone. The harvesters will have adapted to energy weapons, plasma cannons, and all the advanced stuff the aliens use. But they might not know how to handle bullets and bombs. There's only one way to find out, Jake said. I'm taking personal command of the rescue mission. Mike, I want you and a team of Marines ready for boarding action if needed. Boarding action? Lisa stared at him. Jake, you're talking about getting on a harvester ship. That's suicide. Maybe. Or maybe it's so crazy that they won't see it coming. Jake turned to Alex. Doctor, I need you to monitor everything during this fight. If we're right about human unpredictability being effective, we need to document it. And if we're wrong, we'll be dead before we can regret it, Mike finished. As the human ships prepared to face their first harvester encounter, Alex couldn't help but think about the irony. Humanity's most advanced weapons were considered primitive junk by galactic standards. Their tactics were dismissed as chaotic and undisciplined. Their entire approach to warfare was seen as crude and barbaric. But sometimes in a galaxy of perfect logic and advanced thinking, what you really needed was a species crazy enough to fight dirty and too stupid to know when they were beaten. The Deathworlders were about to show the galaxy what they had learned from growing up on the most dangerous planet anyone had ever heard of. Commander Jake Morrison gripped the armrest of his captain's chair as the human escort ship Defiant raced through space toward the battle zone. Through the view screen, he could see the distant flashes of weapons fire where the Catherian evacuation fleet was making their desperate last stand. Sir, we're getting close, reported Lieutenant Amy Parker from the communication station. The Catherian fleet commander is requesting our status. Tell him we're 2 minutes out, Jake replied. And Amy, make sure our ships are recording everything. If this goes badly, at least Earth will know what happened. The tactical display showed the grim situation ahead. 3 massive harvester ships, each one bigger than anything humanity had ever built, were systematically destroying the Catherian escort vessels. The alien ships fired their advanced plasma weapons in perfectly coordinated attacks, but the harvesters adapted to each shot, their shields growing stronger with every impact. Sergeant Amy Parker, who had transferred from Luna Station to join this mission, monitored the alien communications. Sir, the Catherians have lost half their escort fleet. The civilian transports are defenseless. Jake nodded grimly. Signal our other ships. Tell them to remember the plan. No formations, no coordinated attacks, no predictable movements. Everyone fights their own way. On the screen, the first harvester ship came into view. It was sleek and black, covered in strange geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change as Jake watched. He had never seen anything so alien and terrifying. Weapons. Range in 30 seconds, called out Chief Engineer Tom Bradley from his station. All systems ready, sir. Jake took a deep breath. Tom, load the special package. Let's see how these machines handle something they've never seen before. The special package was humanity's oldest and most primitive weapon, updated for space, combat, nuclear missiles with kinetic penetrators, chemical explosives, and old-fashioned armor-piercing rounds. Technology so basic that no advanced civilization had used it for centuries. Firing solution locked, Tom reported. Sir, are you sure about this? These weapons look like toys compared to what the Catherians are using. Sometimes toys work better than fancy gadgets, Jake replied. Fire when ready. The Defiant launched its attack, and immediately Jake knew something was different. The harvester ship, which had been smoothly deflecting Catherian plasma beams, suddenly jerked and twisted as the primitive human weapons struck its hull. Alarms started blaring on the alien vessel as systems that had adapted to energy weapons struggled to understand physical projectiles traveling at incredible speeds. "Direct hit!" Tom shouted in amazement. "Sir, we punched right through their shields. They didn't adapt in time." On the tactical display, Jake watched as the other human ships joined the attack. Captain Ben Rodriguez in the ship Courage used ramming speed to get close, then launched boarding pods directly at the harvester hull. The machines had no protocol for dealing with such a suicidal tactic. Lieutenant Colonel Mike Davis led the Marine boarding party that launched from the pods. Jake listened to their radio chatter as they fought their way into the harvester ship. "This is crazy." Mike's voice crackled over the radio. "These machines keep trying to predict our moves, but we're not following any plan. Rodriguez, take your team left. Wilson, go up that corridor. Everyone else follow me through this hole we just blasted." The Marines used tactics that would have horrified any military academy. They split up randomly, attacked from unexpected angles, and used weapons in ways they were never designed for. Private Danny Clark used grenades to blast through walls instead of doors. Corporal Rita Stone climbed through ventilation shafts to attack from above. Nothing they did followed any logical pattern. "It's working," Mike reported, his voice filled with amazement. "The machines keep pausing like they're trying to process what we're doing. Every time they start to adapt, we do something completely different." Meanwhile, Jake focused on the space battle. The harvester ships were learning to handle human kinetic weapons, but every time they adapted, the human captains changed tactics entirely. Captain Sue Morgan in the ship Relentless started, using her engines to ram debris into the enemy hull. Captain Bill Turner began spinning his ship while firing, creating unpredictable weapon trajectories. Dr. Alex Turner's voice came over the communications from Earth. "Jake, this is incredible. The data we're getting shows the harvester adaptation. Systems are overloading. They're trying to process too many different types of attacks at once. What does that mean for us?" Jake asked while dodging return fire from the second harvester ship. "It means keep being unpredictable. Every time you do something that doesn't make tactical sense, their systems have to start the analysis process over again." Jake grinned fiercely. "Tom, prepare the really stupid plan." "Sir, which really stupid plan?" "We have several. The one where we ram their ship with ours." Tom's eyes went wide. "Sir, that will destroy us too." "Not if we bail out at the last second in escape pods. Load everyone into pods and set the ship for collision course. We'll use our own ship as the biggest missile they've ever seen." The plan was so insane that even Mike's Marines stopped fighting for a moment when they heard it over the radio. But insane was exactly what worked against the harvesters. As the Defiant accelerated toward the lead harvester ship, Jake and his crew piled into escape pods. The alien machines tried desperately to calculate the best defense against a suicide attack, but their processors couldn't handle the illogical nature of the human strategy. The collision was spectacular. The Defiant's nuclear reactor went critical, on impact, creating an explosion that tore through the harvester ship's hull. The alien vessel, which had survived attacks from the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, was crippled by humanity's most primitive tactic. From his escape pod, Jake watched as the remaining harvester ships began to retreat. Mike's boarding party had planted explosives throughout the second ship, using a combination of demolition charges and improvised bombs that followed no standard military protocol. The third harvester ship, faced with enemies it couldn't predict or counter, chose to withdraw rather than face destruction. "All human ships report status," Jake called out as rescue ships arrived to collect the escape pods. "Courage reporting," came Captain Rodriguez's voice. "We lost our main engines, but we're alive. And sir, we just saved 3,000 Catherian civilians." "Relentless here," added Captain Morgan. "Minor damage, but we're operational. The Catherians are asking how we did that." Jake smiled as his pod was recovered by a Catherian rescue ship. Through the small window, he could see Ambassador Veltar himself waiting in the docking bay. The alien diplomat's golden eyes were wide with something Jake had never seen from any Catherian before: awe. When Jake climbed out of the pod, Veltar approached him slowly, as if seeing him for the first time. "Commander Morrison," the alien said quietly, "your species just accomplished something that 12 advanced civilizations could not. You defeated the Harvesters in direct combat." "We got lucky," Jake replied, though he didn't really believe it. "No," Veltar said firmly. "Luck does not explain what I witnessed. Your tactics made no logical sense. Your weapons were primitive by our standards. Your strategy appeared to be complete chaos. Yet it worked perfectly." Jake looked around at his crew, dirty and exhausted, but alive. "Maybe that's the point, Ambassador. Maybe sometimes the best strategy is to have no strategy at all." News of the human victory spread across the galaxy, faster than light itself. Species that had written off humanity as primitive traders suddenly wanted to understand how such a young civilization had succeeded, where ancient empires had failed. Dr. Alex Turner received reports from across known space. The few surviving military analysts from fallen civilizations all asked the same question: how had the humans made it look so easy? The answer was becoming clear to those who understood. Humanity hadn't grown up on a peaceful world where logic and order ruled everything. They had evolved on Earth, a planet so dangerous that survival required constant adaptation, unpredictable responses, and the willingness to try anything when conventional wisdom failed. The galaxy was beginning to understand that there was a difference between an advanced civilization and a dangerous one. And humanity, the species from the death world called Earth, was about to show everyone just how dangerous they could be. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned ship Liberty, watching as the largest fleet in human history assembled around her. 6 months had passed since the first victory against the Harvesters, and everything had changed. The galaxy now looked to humanity not as junior partners, but as their last hope for survival. Through the view screen, she could see ships from dozens of species flying alongside human vessels. Catherian cruisers moved in formation with Earth destroyers. Centauri survivors worked side by side with human engineers. The fleet represented something that had never existed before, a truly united galactic force. "Admiral," called Captain Ben Rodriguez from the tactical station, "all ships report ready for the final assault. We have confirmation that the Harvester home base is directly ahead." Kate nodded, her expression serious. The past months had been filled with victories, but each one had come at a cost. They had learned that the Harvesters weren't just machines, they were connected to a central intelligence that coordinated their attacks across the galaxy. To truly end the threat, they had to destroy the source. "Dr. Turner, is the virus ready?" Kate asked. Dr. Alex Turner looked up from his mobile laboratory station. "Ready as it'll ever be. The computer virus is designed to exploit the same adaptation systems that make the Harvesters so dangerous. Instead of helping them learn, it'll trap them in endless loops trying to counter attacks that don't exist. And it'll only work if we can get close enough to their command ship to upload it directly," added Lieutenant Colonel Mike Davis, who was preparing his assault team for what everyone knew would be the most dangerous mission ever attempted. Kate looked around at her crew, these humans who had volunteered to fight an enemy that had destroyed civilizations thousands of years old. They all knew the odds. Intelligence reports suggested the Harvester home base contained hundreds of ships, all linked to a central command system that had been learning from every battle across the galaxy. "All ships, this is Admiral Sullivan," Kate announced over the fleet communications. "Today we end this war, not just for humanity but for every species that calls this galaxy home. Remember what we've learned. Stay unpredictable, trust your instincts, and show these machines what happens when you threaten a Deathworld species." The fleet moved forward toward the Harvester stronghold, a massive structure floating in deep space that looked like a twisted metal city. As they approached, enemy ships began emerging from docking bays, their black hulls gleaming with alien technology. "Here they come," reported Captain Rodriguez, 200 Harvester ships and counting. "All ships begin the dance," Kate ordered. What followed was unlike any space battle in galactic history. Instead of forming neat battle lines or following standard tactical procedures, the Allied fleet scattered in seemingly random directions. Human ships led the way, showing their alien allies how to embrace chaos as a weapon. Captain Sue Morgan, and the Relentless began spinning her ship while firing missiles in all directions. The harvesters tried to predict her trajectory, but every calculation was wrong because she wasn't following any plan at all. Commander Jake Morrison, now commanding the new ship Defiant 2, used a tactic that made even his own crew nervous. He flew directly toward a group of enemy ships, waited until the last possible second, then had his entire crew bail out in escape pods while the ship continued on autopilot, loaded with explosives. "Jake, you're insane," came Captain Morgan's voice over the radio as she watched the empty ship slam into 3 harvester vessels at once. "Insane is what works," Jake replied from his escape pod, already being picked up by a rescue ship. "Besides, we've got plenty more ships where that came from." The alien crews, watching the humans fight, began to understand something that no military academy had ever taught them. Sometimes the best strategy was to have no strategy. Sometimes winning meant being willing to do things that made no logical sense. A Kytherian captain named Zexhai, commanding one of the surviving ships from his species, found himself laughing as he watched human tactics. "Veltar," he called to the ambassador who was serving as a liaison, "your humans are completely mad." "Yes," Veltar replied, his golden eyes bright with something like joy. "Beautifully, wonderfully mad. And it's working." The harvester fleet, designed to counter logical attacks from predictable enemies, began to falter as their adaptation systems overloaded. Every time they started to understand one human tactic, the humans switched to something completely different. Mike Davis led the most important part of the mission. His assault team, riding in boarding pods, launched directly at the harvester command ship. The pods themselves were built using human engineering principles, which meant they looked like junk but worked perfectly. "Remember," Mike told his team as they approached the enemy ship, "once we're inside, split up randomly. Don't follow any standard breach protocols. Danny, I want you to use explosives to make your own doors. Rita, climb through the walls if you have to. Everyone else just cause as much chaos as possible while I get to the central computer." The boarding action was even more chaotic than the space battle. Human Marines fought through the harvester ship using tactics that would have failed any military exam. They used maintenance tunnels as attack routes, turned utility rooms into fortresses, and treated every door as optional. Private Danny Clark lived up to his reputation by blasting holes through walls instead of going around them. "Why use the corridor when you can make your own?" he shouted over the sound of explosions. Corporal Rita Stone discovered that harvester ships had the same basic design principles as human buildings, just arranged differently. She began moving through ventilation systems and utility spaces, appearing behind enemy robots when they least expected it. The harvesters tried desperately to adapt to the human assault, but every time their processors developed a counter-strategy, the humans did something completely different. It was like trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces kept changing shape. Mike finally reached the central computer core, a massive chamber filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with alien energy. The central intelligence of the harvester network was here, the mind that had directed the destruction of 12 civilizations. "Alex, I'm at the core," Mike reported. "Beginning virus upload." Dr. Turner's voice crackled over the radio from the Liberty. "Mike, you need to hold that position for at least 10 minutes while the virus spreads through their network." 10 minutes. Got it. Mike looked around at the dozens of harvester robots closing in on his position. This is going to be interesting. What followed was the kind of last stand that human soldiers had been making for thousands of years. Mike used every trick he had learned in decades of combat, fighting not just to win, but to buy time for the EO virus to work. He used explosive charges to create barriers, turned the chamber's own equipment into weapons, and when his ammunition ran low, he started throwing anything he could find at the approaching robots. It was desperate, chaotic, and completely human. "Upload at 50%, Alex reported. "Hold on, Mike." "Holding," Mike replied, though he was running out of options. The robots were learning his tactics, adapting to his weapons, closing, and despite everything he could do. But then something amazing happened. The other Marines, who were supposed to be causing chaos elsewhere in the ship, began arriving at the core chamber. They had abandoned their assigned missions to help their commander, following the most human instinct of all, protecting their own. "Nobody fights alone," Corporal Stone said as she dropped through a ceiling panel, landing right on top of a harvester robot. "Damn right," agreed Private Clark, whose explosives had opened a new entrance to the chamber. Together, the human team held the chamber long enough for the virus to complete its work. Across the harvester network, the ancient machines began to shut down as their own adaptation systems turned against them, trapped in endless loops trying to counter attacks that existed only in their corrupted programming. Admiral Sullivan watched from the Liberty as the harvester fleet simply stopped moving. One by one, the black ships went dark, their crews of robots frozen by the virus that turned their greatest strength into their ultimate weakness. "All ships, report status," Kate called out. "Defiant 2 reporting mission success," came Jake's voice. "Mike and his team are safe and the harvesters are down." Across the fleet, similar reports came in. The Alliance had won, but the cost had been high. Many ships were damaged, many crews were injured, and some would never come home. But as Kate looked out at the disabled harvester fleet, she knew that something important had happened here. The galaxy had learned that sometimes survival didn't come from being the most advanced or the most logical. Sometimes it came from being willing to fight dirty, think differently, and never give up even when the odds were impossible. Ambassador Veltar approached Kate on the bridge, his golden eyes serious. "Admiral Sullivan, on behalf of all surviving species, I must ask, what do you call people who can do what your species has done?" Kate smiled, thinking of Earth hanging in space around a yellow star, that dangerous blue world that had forged humanity into what they were today. "We call ourselves human, Ambassador, but I think the galaxy has a different name for us now." "Yes," Veltar agreed. "Deathworlders, the species that learned to survive on the most dangerous planet anyone has ever heard of. And now, the guardians of us all." As the Allied fleet began the long journey home, messages spread across the galaxy. The harvesters were defeated, the threat was ended, and everyone knew who had made it possible. From the third planet of a small yellow star, the Deathworlders had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same.